shoot. Sorry about that. Just realized that I had the mic muted. So I'll start over. Welcome to the shop. Getting started a little late. Today we're going to be doing things a little bit different. We're going to be doing them kind of freestyle. So I'm going to, let's see. So I'm going to be, oh, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to be doing this this video a little bit freestyle, and we're going to be, it won't be just at the lathe. We're going to be moving around the shop, okay? Because we're going to need to utilize some other tools in order to get this done. So anyway, going back into the rant that I was talking about before, is these Harbor Freight F clamps, right? And I've had these for many, many years, and they have served me quite well, with one exception. If you look right here at the threaded side, okay, you'll notice that there's very little travel there. That's not the way I bought them, okay? When I bought them, it was more like this one, okay? And you can see you got lots more travel on this side. And I thought maybe I could like clamp this down or something and like thread this off. But that never seemed to work. And I hated to get rid of these clamps because, like I said, you know, they've worked very well for me over the years. So I came up with a way to fix them. It started when one of the handles actually fell off of one of these clamps. This one just fell off, and I got a chance to see what was going on inside. And actually what's happening is these little gray areas that you can see on the handle here are actually plastic. Sorry, camera's reversed. They're actually plastic. And this rubber part is just formed around it. Well, the problem is that the plastic is not very good quality plastic. It is Harbor Freight. You know, what do you expect? So I think what happened is over the years, as you thread this on, those first couple of threads have they get purchased inside the little plastic part, and then it allows it to screw itself on. And the plastic's so soft, I don't understand. It's not melting it, but for whatever reason, you cannot get it off, and it's stuck. And so then I ended up with these clamps that have very little travel, like this guy right here, which doesn't make it useless, but it makes it less useful, and we don't need that. Okay? So anyway, I figured out how to fix it. And like I said, we're going to be doing this one a little different because I'm going to be working at the lathe and away from it. So I have a couple other cameras set up, and hopefully this won't be too janky. This is something that I intend to incorporate more in the future. So bear with me today while we figure out how this is going to go. So let me switch cameras here, and then we're going to take a walk, and we're going to start addressing how to pull these handles off, how to get the handles off in the case that your handles aren't falling off. Let's see. All right, which camera are we talking about here? This one? That one. Okay. All right, so we want 4. Okay. So don't get motion sick on me, but we're going to take a walk over to the table saw. Don't judge me. Shop's a mess. Okay, so here we are at the table saw, and you can see some of the tools that we're going to use to work on this. Hang on one second. I'm going to move some other stuff around. So I'm going to move a few other things around so that we have some choices on views, and so that I can track and make sure that you guys are seeing what I want you to see. So hold on. This is the janky part I was talking about. Okay. All right. So what I have here is a mallet and an old chisel. Now, I wouldn't call this a trash chisel. It's just one that I haven't taken the time to really clean up. Let's see. Sorry about that. Those pesky car warranty people, I know you guys are probably having trouble with them too. But anyway, this is my, this is just a regular bench chisel, okay? And I'm going to use this to get rid of, uh-oh, hang on one second. No, cancel. All right, we got power issues. All right. The luxury of being mobile. Well, let's see if we can just make it power through it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, so I got this handle here that we need to get this handle off, all right? And we're going to use this chisel, okay? Don't use your best chisel. Don't go out and use your $50, Japanese chisel, $100 Japanese chisel for this, because there is a chance that you could possibly damage the edge of your tool with all the banging and stuff that we're going to need to be doing. So don't use a good chisel. All right. So what we're going to do is take the chisel, and what we have to do is get this off. But not only do we want to preserve the edge of this chisel, but we also want to preserve the threads. Because if we take this and hammer down into it and hit the threads, we could damage the threads, making the chisel no good anyway. So first thing I want to do is put a little bit of wood underneath it in case the chisel slips off and I don't want it to crash down on my cast iron table. So what I want to do is take this chisel, and basically I just want to split this plastic. I don't need to cut it all the way down to the threads. I just need to split it on all four sides. All right. Hopefully the this mount will hold. It's probably going to bounce a bit as I'm hammering, but we'll see. All right. So you can hear where the plastic is cracked. So just go around it and continue to crack that plastic. But again, you don't want to go all the way through because you don't want to damage the threads or your chisel. Okay? You can hear it when the plastic cracks. It may not convey in this video. All right? But when you're doing it, trust me, you'll know. Okay? So let's see if we got it enough. So once you do that, then you can take this handle and you can just kind of like, so what I'm actually doing, let's see if I can show it, is I'm doing like this to lever it off. All right? Comes right off. And as you can see inside there, it's plastic. All right? And you can see where this hole goes way down in there, and these threads are taking purchase in this gray plastic, and that's what has allowed it to drive itself in there, shortening the usability, and reducing the usability of this clamp. Okay, so that's the easy part. So we got that off. All right, so we're gonna go back over to the lathe because my battery on this camera right here is kind of running low, and I don't want it to shut off while we're doing it. So we're gonna go back. Ooh, found a charger. We're going to go back over to the lathe, and finish this up, because what we're actually going to do is turn a handle. So those of you that were fearful that we wouldn't do some turning, never fear. All right. So let's move back over here to the lathe. Switch cameras again. All right, so now what we got this end right here is exposed. So what I actually did was, you need to take a pair of calipers. Okay. And we're not going to use the measurements on it. I never do. I always use this for relative measurements. So what we're going to do is take it and measure and see what size this is. Now, I like to move around it because, you know, I definitely want to know what size it is. Okay, and I'm going to lock that down with the little locking thread. Okay, and then I'm going to go and, oops. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and use that to check the size of the drill bit. All right. So this fits very. This is bigger than the drill bit. I wanted the hole a little bit undersized to give these knurled pieces, these knurled edges, a little bit of bite. All right. Forgot to do one more thing. Turn this thing around so I can see. All right. Hey everybody. I didn't get a chance to greet everybody as they came in because I was running late as usual. So anyway, so when we're determining the size of our bit, we want to make sure that it's a couple sizes under. You want to make sure that it's a couple it's undersized by a couple of sizes. Now, I don't know if Harbor Freight has changed the size of the stem on these handles, but I can tell you that the bit that I'm using is, let's see what we got here, 21/64. Okay, and I find that works pretty good. And you're going to need one of these Jacob Chuck live center live center. They're not live center because it doesn't spin, but for your tailstock, you're going to need this to drill your holes. You could do it on the drill press, but the whole thing is, if you want it to be straight, I find that the best way to do that is to drill it. In this case, is to drill it on the lathe. So let's get a couple of things ready here. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of adjusting on the picture because I didn't do that ahead of time. I think that's the wrong camera. Yeah. Okay. So let's adjust this thing so you guys can see what I'm doing. Man, that looks chaotic. Let's move this back a bit. All right. Let me see what's happening. Okay, this is my overhead view. Try to straighten that out a bit. All right. So I don't know about you guys. It is the new year. And you know everybody always sets resolutions and things that maybe they'll do, maybe they won't. But I can tell you that I am definitely planning on being a little bit more serious about my YouTube content. You know, putting out more regular content and trying to follow up a little bit better and trying to build a little bit more community. So you guys, please feel free to comment on any of my videos that you're watching. I know that I haven't been terribly great about responding to comments, but that's another thing I'm going to try to change this year. So, all right. I think that'll almost do. It's not as good as usual, but oh, that's why. Turn this around. Oh no. Okay. Save. Okay, so apparently this one's going to be a bit of an, like I said, this one's going to be a bit of an adventure. All right, so I had the camera upside down. Figured that one out. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to take our blank. And what I got here is, I'm making these out of pine, some old pine, so it's kind of tough, tougher than the usual stuff. And I'm not sure that this is really the best material for what I'm using it for, but it's okay. If it turns out to not be quite sturdy enough, then I'll just take it off and make some new ones. Kind of the beauty of being able to do these kinds of things in your shop for yourself, you know. If you don't like the result, you can always go back and do it again. So what we're going to do first is we're going to mark out center on both ends of the blank. This blank is bigger at 1.5 inches square. It's bigger than than we really need. So you don't have to be too serious about getting, you know, precisely centered on both sides. Okay. Now you guys know that I really, really like using this type of step center right here. Okay. See if I can get a little closer. Okay. All right, great. So you guys know I like using this flexible point center when I'm doing my when I'm, you know, turning between centers. But actually, this is not great for the operation that we're going to be doing right now. Okay. So I'm not going to be using these, although these are my favorite hands down. What you really want is something more like what's in the chuck. Something like this. This is very similar to what I have in the chuck. But this is what you want, because you want to be able to register that point, but also have these blades kind of bite in, because the way we're gonna drill this, we're gonna rely heavily on the fact that these are fixed points. Now with the flexible point, the flexible centers, the problem is that ring of teeth, instead of the teeth are kind of small in this, which are usually good. That's usually a good thing, but they have a tendency to just dig. They have a tendency to just kind of cut in like a little circle. I was trying to see if I had one of the other end pieces from yesterday, because it would show it. But instead of like this right here, it's got these 4 little points that have bit in and register on the bit, right? And it'll hold it there for me, so that when I use the drill bit, because that's going to be my other center, it'll lock it in and it'll allow me to drill out my hole where the flexible ones will not. All right. So we're going to load up a drive spur. But before we do that, got to do one more thing. Let me go get my mallet. Okay. So what we need to do is take this, and whichever end is going to go to the drive spur side, it really doesn't matter. We're going to just line that up with the center, okay? And then we're going to give it a couple of taps. You don't want to do this with a metal hammer. You want to do it with like a dead blow, rubber mallet, or a wooden. This one I call the attitude adjuster. You want to use something like that, okay? So then we're going to put that in, all right? And then we're going to put our drill bit. Now, for the way I'm using this, it's really kind of important that it's a brad point. See, so you got this little tiny. Wait a minute. For those of you that aren't sure what makes a brad point special, man, there's just enough delay to be a pain. See that spur right here in the middle? Okay, so we're going to use that as our center to when we turn this. Now that may or may not make any sense to you, but it will be very clear here in just a minute. So what we're going to do, let's go ahead and switch to the tailstock camera view. Hopefully it's about where I want it. Let's see here. Down just a little bit. Nope, too far. Went the wrong direction. A little bit more. All right, so let's get in a little closer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the point of my brad point, okay, and I'm going to bring that in and then line that up with my center mark, okay, and I'm only going to allow the point to make contact, all right? These little barbs at the bottom of the flutes, I don't want those to make contact just yet. I want to make sure that's seated on the drive spur, and I'm going to turn the speed down a bit. It doesn't need to be up very high, probably around 600 or 700 RPM or so. And I'm going to turn this on, and then once I turn this on, you can see I have a little black mark here. I've marked a little black mark on the drill bit right there. That's the depth I need, which is according to the size of the fluted portions of the threaded post here. All right, I think that is, let me see. that is probably, that's just about 3/4 of an inch. All right. And by the way, the blank, this blank is 5 1/4 inches long, which is actually longer than we need. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and turn the lathe on, and it's going to spin between the point on the tip of this bit here and these drive spur points on this side. Okay. We're going to get that going, and then we're going to go ahead and drill this to our depth mark, which is just about there. Turn this off. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? Let's pull this off of there. Okay. We won't need that anymore. So now we're going to go to a 60-degree cone. All right. I don't use these for a lot of things, but for if I have a hole that's already drilled in something, it's excellent for that because it's tapered, so it'll self-center once it makes contact with the wood. All right. Now, the reason why I do it this way, it doesn't really matter that much for a handle, but because I have it mounted on this drive spur, and I put that Jacob's chuck in there, it's going to drill that hole straight and centered in relation to the way it's mounted on here. So when I put that center point in there, it's going to be lined, the handle will end up being turned so that it's lined up with the hole inside, so that when I put it on my clamp, it won't sit cockeyed, you know, it won't sit to one side. It'll go on there centered and true. All right. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to round this thing out. You could do that with you can certainly do that with a roughing gouge if you want. If you've been watching me do my thing for a while, you know that I like, let's see, you know that I like to, hang on, trying to make a better view for you guys. All right. You know that I like to use a bowl gouge for my roughing operations. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and rough this down to a cylinder first. And then I'm going to start making the marks for my length. Need more speed. I'm running about 1700 RPM for anybody that's interested to know that. And basically I'm just going to round this out. Okay. Like I said, at 1.5 inches, this is much bigger than sorry. I ate a chip. Probably should put my face shield on, but for something this small, I typically don't, but I would highly recommend that whenever you're working at the lathe, you use a face shield. Anyway, like I was saying, this 1.5 inch blank is it's considerably bigger than the original handle, all right, in diameter. All right, that's easy to see right there. So what I did is I've already made a couple of these, and the size I went with, I'm going to get one of them so I can measure it. I didn't think to do that earlier. Let's see, at the thickest side, let's set this caliper, and then we can measure it to see what I ended up going with. So my ruler is right here. So what I ended up doing was about 1.25 inches. But as you can see, that is considerably larger than the original one. And why not? I mean, it's a lot easier to get a hold on a little bit bigger one. So you can make this as big as you want. Now, I'm not going to even bother with this shape because, to be honest, I wasn't that fond of it to start with. Okay? So you can do whatever shape you want. So I'm going to go with something really basic. I'm just going to taper it down on one end and keep the bottom of it kind of bulbous. So what I'm doing now is I'm just lining this up and getting an approximation for how long I want it to be. And I kind of like the size. I kind of like the length that it already is. And let's check and see where we are on the diameter. Still a little fat, so we'll take a couple of passes, preserving that mark right there. Again, this particular dimension Doesn't really matter, and it's, you know, about personal preference, you know, whatever's going to be comfortable to you. Okay. So that's just about right. This side's a little small, and that's okay because I'm going to taper that down anyway. So I'm going to grab my other one. Well, normally I would take the existing one that I made so that they all look the same, and I would kind of line it up and figure out why the high spot was. But I think it was, I feel pretty good about it being right there. If it's a little off, it's okay. You know, this is shop implements. They don't need to be perfect. So now you shape this however you want. Like I said, I'm going to do like a slight taper towards the threaded portion of the clamp of the threaded bar. And then I'm just going to round off the bottom. Okay. So this right here, this little exercise has quite a few applications, really. You can use it if you got an old chisel or something that's got a broken handle. You can use it for that. Really any kind of handle you can make the same way. Putting it between centers, drilling a hole, and going about this process the same way that I just did. You can make all sorts of handles for all sorts of things. So I just want to get this. I'll set that right there. Then I'm going to go to my detail gouge so that I can start working down to where I want to go. Okay. All right. So now start blending these two shapes together. Okay. All right. So there's going to come a point where you're not going to be able to get the kind of access you want because this shoulder is in your way. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. I think I got a pretty good indication of where I want to end this. So I'm going to go ahead and take my bowl gouge. And I'm just going to remove, oops, that wasn't what I had intended. It slipped a little bit, but that's okay. We'll be able to cut that out of there. So I've removed this material, so now I can get in there and complete this curve to my liking. I come in here and pick that up. Okay. And I come in here and remove a little bit more this material. All right. Come back in, clean that up. And then I'm going to come to the top, and I just want to get this cleaned up as best I can. It doesn't have to be all the way down to the hole, unless that's what you want to do. And then now we got all that, so I'm going to go ahead and use a shear scrape to kind of blend all these shapes together a bit. Get rid of some of those ridges. All right. Then we're going to sand it. I'm going to start with 220 or 120 for shaping. I'm going to turn the speed down. Okay. And let's go ahead and sand this. Now, when you're sanding, especially something like pine on the lathe, you know, it's fine to do your fairing of the surfaces and things with sandpaper. And it's all right to do it on the lathe while it's spinning. But that leaves a very noticeable radial pattern, radial scratch pattern. And so what you want to do is once you get it kind of shaped the way you want it, okay, turn it off, and you're going to have a lot of scratches that are going to run this way. So what you want to do is take a little bit of time and just sand with the grain with that current grit. And that's going to go a long way to get rid of a lot of those radial scratches. Okay. Again, it's a clamp handle, so you know how persnickety you want to get with this is really kind of up to you. Okay. Melinda asked what was the handle for. It's for my clamp, and my clamp had a broken, well, it had a broken handle, but I broke it some more so that I could get it off of there, so that I can make a replacement to increase the performance of that clamp. So I got that done. Now I'm gonna go back with some 220, do my final sanding. For these things, I don't really care about, you know, I don't need a pristine surface. I certainly don't want to get any splinters from it, but I don't really care about getting a pristine surface. And also, resist the urge to do a shiny finish, all right, a film finish, because you really want to be able to get some grip on these things when you're trying to tighten them. And if you put a glass smooth finish on there that's been wet sanded and buffed and polished and all that, it's going to be real hard to clamp, you know, to use these as clamp handles, because you won't be able to get a decent purchase on them as you're tightening them down. So I'm gonna just use a little bit of wax on it just to give it just a little bit of protection, and hopefully it'll age nicely over time. So all right, so we're pretty much done here. So I'm gonna go ahead and use a little bit of wax. Any wax will do, but I'm gonna use some of this custom wax from Custom Creations from my buddy over in Australia. Not sure if Chili Man's in here tonight or not, but gonna go ahead and use a little bit of this, and we're gonna just go ahead and put a little bit of wax on it. Yeah, it's gonna make it feel nice, and then it'll give it a little bit of resistance to the dirt and oils and things off your hands, and you know, make it look nice. Okay, so I got a little bit of wax on it. Buff it in a little bit, crank the speed up a little bit here. Again, I'm not looking for anything slick. I just want to put a little bit something for a little bit of protection on it, and this wax is going to do just that. Okay, so now I've done that, so I can go ahead and part this off. I'm going to use my detail gouge for that. I'm going to get the speed back up. All right. Oops. Not quite like that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is remove some material. Okay, so when you're parting stuff off like this with the tools, okay, it's not about massive material removal. You really want to do this a little bit at a time. Now, as an alternative, if you don't feel comfortable with cutting it off, you could always use a fine-tooth saw, and you could cut it off right there. Let's see. Let me turn off this multi-view. We don't need that anymore. Okay. You could always use a fine-tooth saw and cut this off, and then sand the little nub if you want to. I usually prefer to part it off with the tool, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But either way works just as well. So let me get my tool rest set up for this little operation here. So like I said, you want to remove a little bit at a time, all right, because when we get down to the very last of this, there's not going to be a whole lot of anything holding this piece of wood onto the lathe. So, you know, you don't want to get crazy and be aggressive and have the thing shoot all over the place. In this case, it wouldn't be that bad because, you know, it's just a tool handle. But if this was a piece, you know, that this was a fine piece that you'd invested a lot of time into, you know, this is a terrible time to screw things up. Now, you ain't going to be able to see that well when I do this because I have to reach around it. But I'll go back to the split view. Maybe you'll be able to see it a little better, but I'm going to hold it around the back, and then I'm going to bring, let's see if you can, yeah, you should be able to see. Then I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to cut this just like so with the tip of the tool. There we go. Then I'm going to kill the power. All right. Back off the tailstock, and there you go. And it's pine, so you're going to probably end up with a little you'll probably end up with a little divot the same way that I did. You'll probably end up with a little divot same way that I did because it's pine. If you did this out of like a harder wood, you probably wouldn't have that problem. Okay, so let's walk over to the table saw, back over to that camera, and I'll show you how I assemble this thing. Actually, you know what? There's another view. See if I can find it. Is that it? No, that's just more of the mess around here. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is how I've decided to put this back on, because I'm not going to use any glue or anything like that. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way. I'm not going to use any epoxy. Again, you know, these handles, you know, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of half experiment. The concept is sound, but I'm not all that, you know, concerned about it. So what I'm going to do is take this handle, and I'm going to put this part, okay, I'm going to put this part of the clamp onto the edge of the tabletop here. I'm doing this slow to make sure you guys can see. Yeah. So I'm going to do that, all right? And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and put that on the end, and because I made it a little undersized, you won't be able to push it on. So we're going to take our mallet, and we're just going to drive it on, all right, until it seats, okay? And that is on there pretty well, all right? And so now I have full use of the threads on my clamp here. Ooh, that one cracked a little bit. That's okay. And you can see here that I have another one that I did prior to this video. All right. But the reason why I put it on the edge of the table like this, right, is because you don't, this is like pot metal, you know. I'm sure it's not a real high quality metal. It's Harbor Freight. I'm gonna go back to the other camera so we can talk about this a little bit and wrap this thing up. Okay. All right. So flip this around. Man, I swear I'm gonna get the hang of this one day. Okay. All right. So now I did one tonight for you guys. Oops, wrong direction. This way. All right. I did one tonight for you guys, and I did one before to kind of proof of concept to make sure it would work and I wouldn't embarrass myself on a YouTube live. So I made 2 of these. All right. Now, what I was talking about before is this casting, right, is undoubtedly not a high quality metal. So you don't want to put this, you don't want to bang on this so that you're putting stress on these threads in here. That's why I set the bottom of the clamp onto the tabletop and hammered it on so that I was only putting stress on the rod itself, which it could hold up to that little bit of beating, but I didn't want to strip the threads inside of here because that would defeat the whole purpose of trying to repair this thing. So, but anyway, that right there is going to allow me to get several more years of useful service out of this clamp versus having to go and buy another one. And these things work great. I've always, as far as F clamps go, you know, there's not a whole lot to them, but these work really great and they're really inexpensive. And now that I've solved the crappy handle situation, right, I think I've actually improved them a bit. So anyway, you guys, you can use this technique, like I said, to make tool handles of all kinds, putting handles on things that don't have handles, you know, whatever you want to do. So let's see who's that. Connor's daddy. Hi, Connor's daddy. Let's see. And Trace is asking if it's a Powermatic lathe. Yes, it is. So, and Aussie Man's asking, in pine with no glue, will it strip when tightening? Okay, so that's the thing. I haven't had a chance to really put these to use, but again, I mentioned it earlier that this is really more of an experiment for me, right? It would take very little time for me to go back and remake these handles out of cherry or whatever. But I undersized the hole so that those serrations on the bottom of the post could bite in. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know that I would recommend that you make yours out of pine. I'm sure that if you made it out of maple or cherry or something like that, you probably have better success. But I really do think that this is going to work. I feel pretty good about it. So maybe what I'll do is I'll put them in the use, and maybe in a couple of months I'll come back and talk about my experience with them and let you know exactly how that worked out. But I think it's going to work out just fine. I think it's going to be all right. Let's see. Let me go back and see if let's see if I got any other questions that I might have missed. Yeah. All right. Okay. So I guess that's about it. There are going to be some sizable changes to Dreadnought.